Hello and welcome to the Bricecast. This is episode 3. I am Bryce, your host, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, MarkyB, the head coach of Toronto Ultra, and we'll be going through so many questions about the team and the franchise that hopefully you can give us insight into. Before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping, because I feel like it. I had some comments during the week that didn't like my thumbnails. It was a basic thumbnail, and, somebody said they weren't going to watch if I had a bad thumbnail. That's fine. I don't care. If you're not going to watch because of a thumbnail, this podcast probably isn't for you anyway. So with that side, let's get straight into it. Marky, I'm going to ask you some things today, and obviously if anything you can't answer or anything along those lines, feel free to tell me to move on or whatever. But I'm very much interested in Toronto Ultra franchise and everything that's been going on.
Cool.
So first of all, congratulations on the win. That must have been a big relief to you as a head coach.
Yeah, massively. I think more so it was just obviously we were focused on just qualifying, but knowing that we had to obviously kind of coming in, we didn't really expect the things to work out where we just had to get to the final and we'd qualify for a top 8. But obviously that's the way it ended up working out. But we all sort of came in with the mindset of just coming in, we needed to win this thing. So it was obviously a great feeling to be able to do that. So yeah, feeling good.
I've often wondered, Mark, and this is more of a you question in terms of the pressure that you're under as a head coach. Now, from my, I guess, knowledge and what I've heard among the scene, obviously, there's been a lot of talk this year about the way Toronto Ultra have done things in regards to you have a 10-man roster, in regards to your coaching staff, in the way to you approach stuff. Is that win like the culmination of a system you've been working to all year, or is it something you should have come earlier? What is your thoughts on basically your year's run?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think initially we knew that there would be a potential that with sort of the way things were working out, we didn't really have much time to figure out the roster before the start of the season because of just visa problems and stuff. We had two separate groups scrimming. We had the European group and the North American group, so it was very separate. And then we got a little bit of practice before the new year, and then obviously everyone went home for Christmas and whatnot. And by the time everyone was able to actually get all together in Toronto, we had a couple of weeks until Minnesota. So I think we were just sort of a bit under-prepared for the start of the season, and I think that it took her a bit of time to sort of figure out exactly what we needed on this game with the team and whatnot. And obviously, naturally as well, with changing rosters a lot of the time, there's going to be other issues that crop up. Some of those times we were making roster changes and our scrim results, we were one of the better teams in the game, and then we would still come into the tournament and not do that well. But I think over the year we've sort of learned, and I would say the system and as a whole that sort of is working out for us currently, I think I really wouldn't say it's been something that we've sort of been doing all year, but it's sort of been more of a thing that me and Ryan, obviously, Flux, our analyst, is sort of since he came back involved with the team, that we've been working very heavily on. It was something that was kind of hard to implement with just myself, but overall, I think that we've got to a point now where we're very comfortable. Obviously, I think that right now we're pretty confident going to champs, to be honest. So,
well, I mean, we'll get to that because
we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
There is some serious questions I have to ask about that. Some things you said there really intrigued me, right? Because I feel like, and I tweeted this out the other day. I feel like there aren't enough hard stream journalists that pick up on what I think are great news stories. One of them is Flux as your analyst. And some people watching may not remember this guy, but this guy is a legend in European Call of Duty. He is a great Call of Duty man. He jumped on as the Toronto Ultra analyst. And I think that flew under the radar when he first came on.
Yeah.
And then you picked up, you said something there about him coming back. I believe there was a point where his future with the Ultra wasn't cemented. Am I correct in that?
With the COVID situation, he hadn't actually moved out here, and there was basically a bunch of cuts and stuff like that. So essentially, he was sort of no longer with us for a couple months, and then somehow, some way, we got him back. I begged to have him back pretty much, so we got him back, and now he's obviously, like you said, I think he has flown under the radar, to be honest, because he's not really been sort of publicly. He doesn't tweet that much or anything like that. You know what I mean? He's quite he keeps himself to himself.
Yeah.
kind of guy, but he's very, you know him as well. He's a very smart Call of Duty brain. So I think that having that as well as sort of his sort of what he's been doing in his actual sort of day-to-day life before he sort of got involved with us.
Isn't that
He's
isn't
been
that part of
working.
it, Mark? Sorry to interrupt you. Isn't that part of why he came on? Isn't it something that he did in uni or something? I heard directly benefits his new position with the Ultra.
Well, like he's sort of done a lot of data stuff before, so it was just natural that obviously combine the two. He's worked with data stuff before, and now he's got the Call of Duty knowledge too. So combine the two, it's a great combination. And I think he's really helped out a lot, to be honest with you. For me anyway, I think that he's been massive. Just having someone else to bounce ideas off of. If I come in with something that sounds dumb, he'll tell me. If he comes in with something dumb, you know what I mean? It's just massive to have that extra brain there. So
Yeah.
I think he's been a integral part as well.
No, I'm glad to hear it. Like I said, I always thought that flew under the radar for me because, and I don't know whether it's not because he doesn't have as big of a profile anymore, or people just sort of overlooked it, and because maybe there was the COVID situation and people weren't sure what he would be doing with the team. But for me, when I first saw him in the picture, I obviously recognised him straight away when you put out the teaser. There was a teaser picture put out of you guys around the table, and he was sitting there, and I'm like, I know who that guy is. And I think because there's a lot of analysts on team, right? And some of them are more vocal on Twitter than others. Some of them may have an inflated sense of person that I've seen going around the Twitter sphere. And I thought, for him to fly under the radar as he did, as an ex-pro player, as a team who has technically won an international, and if I remember correctly, I might be wrong here, and I don't want to be wrong. Was he on what team was he on that people would recognise? I was trying to figure out what it would be.
TCM,
Yeah.
Epsilon, TCM and Epsilon was right before he kind of like sort of retired. Epsilon when they got 1v3'd by Nameless at Ghost Champs.
Yes, he's in that clip. That's not the way I would recommend people remember him. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for something to kind of get. But yeah, sure. That's probably one of the biggest famous clips. Is he is one of those players in the 1v3 against Nameless. But no, I thought that was great, and it kind of leads on to my next point here, Marky, because in the previous podcast live, I had been, I would say, critical or at least very intrigued as to Toronto Ultra and their way of doing things, right? I lauded on the fact that you guys had gone for a bold strategy at the start of the year with a 10-man roster, full roster of, and you had some superstars in that team, but maybe you'd decided to use the luxury tax in a more diverse way to get yourself a bit of options. And I said my biggest concern is that juggling 10 players and making the right decisions all year is a lot of work for a coach. And that was you, Mark. And I said you couldn't do it, but I said that is an awful lot of work because you have to watch the main team, the sub team, you have to figure out who goes in. I don't know who's backing you up on this point. I even heard rumours during the year, Marky, that you actually had a coach come in because you were a strategic coach at the start of the year. You had a head coach come in, and that head coach then disappeared soon after again. So give me any insight, on the trials and tribulations of being in such a position with so much responsibility on your shoulders. I threw a lot at you
Honestly,
there.
honestly, to me, it doesn't feel like trials and tribulations, to be honest, and it honestly doesn't feel too difficult. To be quite honest with you, I don't really think I've done anything crazy. So I mean, to be honest, it's been obviously a grindy year. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of hours put in. Like I said at the start of the season, I think the 4 sets a day watching the European and then the North American group back to back. That was pretty. Well, it wasn't fun. Sure. And yeah, definitely could have done with some extra hands earlier, but it was just one of those things that we were sort of just in the process of getting that extra person. It just took a bit longer than expected due to multiple reasons. But I think honestly, I don't think it's been difficult. It has been. I'm probably degassing how the difficult periods I've went through now because we've just had some success recently. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of tough decisions. I think that's the biggest thing. I think with the 10-man roster and having sort of to make decisions like that on yourself at times, I think it was difficult, especially with you've got reasoning for all 10 players. I can honestly sit there and give reasoning for all 10 players to play in different positions because I think they're all great and I think they all bring different aspects and great things to the team. I just think it's one of those things that we're just wanting to put the team together with certain elements and certain sort of characteristics as players, and I think some players just miss out on that. But it's one of those things. I think all the players that we've brought in, and all of them have been sort of class with me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think in general, like my 2 years in coaching, I think last year was definitely my most difficult.
Okay.
Obviously, I've still got champs to go, but so I'm judging this season before champs. But I think last season was definitely the most difficult for me out of the three so far. So I'm sort of enjoying this year, to be honest.
Okay. I mean, you say you're not maybe not guessing out on how difficult it'd be, and I've always said I don't want to be too negative about things, and this is one of the things I can genuinely be positive about, Marky, because in my opinion, what you've had to deal with this year, and your own experiences with this, you've had 10 players, you've had a roster and a system that means that any of those 10 players could make it in. Unlike some other franchises, Marky, don't forget, that have essentially got a main roster and completely ignored their responsibilities towards their subs or towards changing their team. In fact, when they change the team, they basically go outside. You have a different system where it's all on you, and you have 10 players, any of which could play, and you've proven this during the year. You've had switch arounds, you've had the trying to find the right consideration of it. They're all viable, and they're all going to be chomping at the bit to get onto that main roster. And all 10 of those players are coming at you. Like that is something that I don't think some head coaches in the franchises or in the CDL have had to deal with in the slightest. So while you can be humble and such, I will give you full credit there to having to adapt to a system. And this is one of the reasons I said, earlier in the year, I said that is a hell of a system to put on one person. I don't know whether it will work out because of just the amount of input that is going to be, rammed at you continuously. So I'm just curious about how you dealt with the personnel aspect of it, because when you've got 10 players, all viable to play, skill levels near enough that it's more difficult for you to pick and get that chemistry right, and the fact that it is going to be a chemistry decision, how have you dealt with that during the year? Because that, to me, is mind-boggling.
Honestly, I've just been trying my best to just be as clear with the players as possible. What I want from them to improve, or what I think's missing that will get them the opportunity to play. I think even people like Toby will tell you this, or players that are sort of in the starting roster now and weren't at some certain parts in the season. Just sort of been trying to just tell the players what to improve on and what they're doing well, what to continue doing, and like try to keep them positive, because I think that's the kind of harder thing for a lot of players, because we've got 10 players who have never been in that situation before,
Yeah.
being a substitute. Like all these players were in pro league teams last year, you know what I mean? So it's like they've never experienced that. So I think that was probably the hardest thing. Obviously, ideally, I would have loved if it was like a system where we could have had the sort of starting players, and then the players who don't start are allowed to play in challengers. But obviously, I understand there's a bunch of rules around that. That would have been ideal.
Yeah.
And then you've got like a good rotation. Like if somebody's not performing, they get dropped to the challenger squad, sort of thing like that, and they're still
Yeah.
competing, so it's still motivating, because it is hard. I can imagine from myself and my experiences as a competitor, it must be hard, sort of practicing for the guys who are not on the starting roster, because they know that realistically, it's pretty unlikely that that set five that they're playing with at that point is going to be the team that they're going to play with at a tournament. Albeit they obviously have the motivation to play to get on that roster, but the motivation is to more so improve themselves rather than improve the team. So it's like a kind of hard aspect to manage without actually having a system where they've got somewhere to also compete in, because if they're not competing, realistically, it's all just about individual improvement. I feel like
Yeah.
if you're thinking as a competitor, that's the way they would probably be thinking.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And again, I think that's what made this system so difficult for me, because I'm sitting there thinking, how do I accurately judge these players who fit into the team? We know that we're not going to get plaudits. I think one of the benefits maybe of the system is that it is a full team of five, so that team of five will get scrims as the Toronto B team.
Yeah.
And we've seen pro teams scrim them because it technically gives you another scrim slot in the roster, and people are happy to play them knowing that the main and the B team are essentially not that far, and you're using a lot of the same system and same players.
Yeah.
It just, for me, you are right, that part about the competitor, and I don't want you to name any name here, Markies, but I'm curious if you had any really difficult discussions this year around people's attitudes, or, by the way, you're going into a sub spot and this is the reason why, and maybe you can have this with you, because that's a very big change, and something you've probably had to do more frequently this year than the last 2 years of coaching combined. Um, has there been any how do I put this? Divas, I think maybe the best word. Little tantrums going on, hard conversations.
Yeah, there's definitely been a bunch of car conversations and some obviously sort of upset players and arguments back and forth. But at the end of the day, I can understand. I'd probably do the same thing if I was in their situation, and I know it's the same in sports and stuff too. But at the end of the day, whatever happens, I'm a neutral. I'm here just to pick the best five players that I think are going to make the team succeed. So that's just my job. So.
No, I get that. I suppose it's also been one of these things where the players have to be a little bit more mature, and you have to. Well, I said at the start of the year, everybody has to step up, right? And I suppose as a coach this year, it's a different kettle of fish, right? It's less players running the team and more you having to lay down the law. Do you feel like you've changed at all just in this year?
Definitely. Like, I felt last year that it was probably my issue that I was like sort of I was obviously, as a Call of Duty pro, used to being that sort of leadership figure in game, but it's different. You have to like sort of learn how to lead differently out of game for sure. And I think that's probably been my biggest learning experience over this year. I feel like I've sort of learned when I need to just tell a player straight, and when I need to handle. You need to learn how to handle players differently. I think that's one thing that I've learned over the year. Just like that, I thought maybe you just handle everyone the same, sort of treat everyone equally. That seems like the fairest way, but I don't think that that's necessarily how it works best in sports. I think you need to handle each and every player's personalities differently, and try and sort of get the best out of them. I think that's the most important thing.
No, I agree. I completely agree. Is it something, those aspects, something you're looking to improve in the following year? Like, I
Yeah,
don't
no,
want
definitely. I'm always constantly trying to just improve in different aspects of coaching, reading different books. Um, and definitely, I'm sort of looking into when I go home in the off season, start doing some more self improvement stuff. But yeah, I'm sort of looking into that currently, but pretty much focused on champs. So haven't got too deep into that yet. But yeah, definitely, I'm really interested in sort of just anything that I can improve myself as a coach. I definitely think that. Honestly, I feel like when I came in as a coach with Splice at World War II, I honestly felt like it was going to be an easy thing to do.
uh-huh.
Because, like I said before, I was that sort of leader figure in my Call of Duty teams that I just thought, oh, if you're a leader in game, it's just going to be the same thing. Like, and it's completely different. And I think that's one thing that's been sort of a bit slower for me to sort of get to grips with. And I think that's something that I really have got to grips with as of late.
No, I agree. I think, and I am going to put you on the spot here just a little bit, Marky. In terms of systems and franchises and such, is it something? And we'll put COVID aside for now, right? Because it's thrown a spanner in every single working going forward. Um, Following on, whether it be with Toronto Ultra or anybody else, would you like a bigger staff to maybe deal with like the mental aspects and help you with these decisions? Like I said, I've always considered it a lot to do here. You've obviously got Flux now, which is something that people probably haven't noticed. They will just see you as the coach and that's it. Is it something you've considered of having like a bigger staff or conversation with a franchise on, hey, look, we can improve in this area, but obviously I only have so many hours in the day?
Yeah, we actually do have. Well, I mean, I guess the like Toronto Ultra staff
Yeah.
is just sort of myself, Ryan, Dom, etc. But there is the wider overactive media staff who, like a bunch of the guys we have that work with the Mad Lions team in LEC, also work directly with the players over here, and there is a lot of help on those different mental aspects of the game, and that is definitely something that we're very very sort of focused on as a franchise, both the mental and physical things that you can do to improve your performance in game. So I think that has been a focus of ours. So yeah, I think that's one thing. I mean, we really don't talk about that stuff too much, to be honest, because like, I mean, it's great, but it's not really. You're not gonna be tweeting out like every day like just done my stretches, guys. Woo.
No, no,
Like,
I get that. But that's one of the things, like I've said before, I don't see more behind the scenes stuff of this
yeah,
because I've always found it, in my mind, very important to essentially get and I don't want to use this word, but it is the most succinct way of putting it. the players in essence are assets that you're paying for per year, right? You are paying for this player to perform, at the best of their ability. And if you're going to do that, then why not invest in making sure you get the most out of them, then make sure that they are consistently at that level. I think some teams fail to do that. I think they just go, oh yeah, we'll just play this player and just let them piss around all year. And I've heard of stories of that come down the grapevine. But no, for me that's an incredibly interesting thing. So I'm glad to hear it's happening at Toronto Ultra, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the responsibilities of myself and the staff is, regardless of what happens to any player, I think one of the responsibilities is that if they come and go from here, they need to be, when they leave, they should be better than when they came. I think that should be the mentality that we have for whoever comes in here. To be honest, I think that's something important to like. I think we just need to continuous improvement in those who stay here. That's the same thing too. I think that's what I strive to sort of achieve here. So yeah.
I fully agree. Let's talk about your win then. I mean, first of all, I've already congratulated you, but to do it at your home series, certainly something special. And I know that the whole Toronto Ultra team are probably buzzing off of it. Was it one of those things that you just like, holy crap, we got to win this year? It was the very last event to get a win in, and you finally got it. What was it like backstage? I'm sure there were staff chats and debriefings and everything going on. What was the atmosphere like in the Toronto Ultra camp, and maybe what was said?
Honestly, we were so focused. I think that was the best thing for us. I think it was a weird chain of events because going into the last 2 weekends with Paris playing, we didn't play the second last event.
Yeah.
We honestly thought Paris were going to come out of groups and we were just going to have to get to the semi-finals, which we felt really confident in doing with the group we had. We just had to get to semi-finals and we qualified. Then Paris made that miracle run, and then it's looking slow for us. But honestly, I felt like that was one of the best things for us as a team because it got us in that mentality like we have to win this last event, and I think that sort of turned up a notch in terms of the intensity. And there was arguments. There was the most arguments I've ever heard in my life as a team in the space of a week, but it was we were drilling stuff in, and it really did come to fruition in the end. And I think that we were just so focused, and I think overall our just the way we sort of executed that event was perfect. I think that even though we had a lot of close games and a lot of slip ups throughout the maps, the guys like on the respawns and the S&Ds stuck to the game plan throughout the bad rounds and the sort of bad hard points or whatever. They just stuck to the plan, and that's the best part about it that I enjoyed the most. Just because that's been an issue of ours, just going behind in S&Ds and just abandon the entire game plan. And I think that that's one thing that really, you should have heard me and Ryan. We were so excited when we were just seeing, just sticking to their guns and doing it. And we knew we could come and win the thing because we literally scrim every team every day, and we are one of the better teams in scrims. And we know if we can be better teams in S&D, that we're going to take respawns in every single series that we play. So we just got to be better at teams in S&D, and then we're going to win events. That's simple as that.
That's good to hear. You said something interesting there about arguments, and I forgot to cover that when we were talking about coaching styles. How have you dealt with in-team arguments, not arguments against you, like, dealing with player conflicts? Because we know it's a big part of Call of Duty, right? Like, we've heard it all year, and I'm sure, Marky, you've heard even more rumours than I have of players falling out this year.
Yeah.
What did you do in Toronto Ultra to kind of get on top of that and, maybe make these guys be more adult and professional in the regards of and the way they conduct themselves towards colleagues and teammates?
I definitely think there's got to be a good balance. I don't think you want players scared to like sort of voice their opinions, but you got to be able to, sort of. I think that's one thing that the players have done a very good job of improving as the season has gone on. That's one thing I've stressed a lot is just the way you talk to your teammates. You can just sort of say the exact same. You can just literally say the exact same thing in a more efficient way that's going to go through to them much better and sort of deliver the message that you want to deliver, but not piss them off. And I think there's going to be times where a player makes the same mistake over and over and over again, and sometimes you just need to absolutely roast them. So I think it's like honestly, it's just about that balance. For me, I feel like there's definitely times for bad arguments. I feel like it's sometimes beneficial, but obviously, ideally, I sort of avoid that as much as possible. I think that's my ideal, but like I said, it's one of those things. Sometimes it's completely necessary.
No, I get that completely, Mark. I think I sometimes forget myself that these are young men, and there is an awful lot of passion there. There is an awful lot of fire for these players. If there wasn't, they probably wouldn't be competing like this. You have to be an ultra competitor to get it through. But again, I hate to go back to kind of flip flop around on this, but we need to talk more about your win because there's, for me at least, there is something that I've seen over the last couple of weeks that I'm not entirely happy with, and it's not Toronto Ultra's fault. It is the way the community has reacted to your win, I think, is in some ways disingenuous to the accomplishment that it is. Because technically, being the very last tournament before champs should mean people will be talking about you being the favourites to win champs. And I don't think I've seen enough of that, right? Theoretically, if COVID aside and we'd done all the normal stuff, if that was another team that had made the run that you had, that had beaten the teams that you had, and that had been in a slightly different position all year, any one of the other big teams had beaten all these teams, they would be talking about them as the favourites for champs. Now, I understand there are prior events before, and that we have had a lot of teams do very well this year, and it does seem to be a very competitive field. But I do feel like there is a line that people refuse to cross in talking about Toronto Ultra winning champs, because if this was a normal year, if COVID hadn't hit, and you guys had won the last big tournament before champs, number one straight away in my book. Number one with a bullet, 100%. Because, we talk about COD being on the day game, and we talk about teams going up and down in terms of capability and consistency. Toronto Ultra winning the last event should put them in that conversation regardless, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I really do not care. To be honest. But I do. But then again, I can see why that we're not getting that. I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at our team on paper in comparison to I think it's one of those things when you look at. I think at one point, I think we had a great week, midway into the season where we got to the semi-finals. It was the weekend we lost against Optic, right? We beat. Who did we beat that weekend? We beat. It's actually a bar, but anyway, we had a good weekend, and I think New York had the same. They also got to the semi-finals, and immediately it was just all about New York. And I think it's just one of those things that, if you look at our players on paper, it's not like the biggest names, sort of, regardless of if we obviously we went and won that event. I think that in general, our sort of perception is always going to be that we're not the best team on paper. So I think that's just sort of expected and not something that I necessarily am too bothered with. Like I said, I think it doesn't really matter. If anything, it's better. If anything, it makes the story way better that we're underdogs, because it means that we come in, we do the job that we know we can do, then we get even more credit. So let's just do that. That sounds like a great plan.
I mean, does it really not even get you slightly? Because there have been times of the year where Toronto Ultra has been a punching bag. Like, people have talked down on the team, and then you come up on this and you don't get the same level of, oh, well, this team is ridiculous. They finally found their form. And in fairness, I could even extend that to some of Toronto Ultra players. I put a tweet out about how well some of them I think are playing, and they've been spat on during parts of the year. Their stocks have been at all-time lows in the coming into the season and all of this. And yet, we come off the back of a win, and I feel like it's not gassed up enough. It's I don't think you have to pretend that they are the second coming, but I do think you have to respect these players in being elite players because they have done this. I put Bance as an example, and people I think people were very easy to forget what a deep dark hole I thought Bance was in at the start of this year, and Bance would have said it himself. His stock went from fantastic to terrible very, very quickly. People were wondering whether he got into a main team, and then the last few events I've seen him play, incredibly consistent, back to, I dare say, the Bance of old that people love. But I don't see people talking about it. I don't see them giving him the credit to have that that roller coaster, and he's come back up to being a consistent good player that we should be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think Ben in general this year his attitude's been better than what I experienced when I teamed with them at the end of World War II when I joined Splice as a coach. And I think in general, I think he's just way more comfortable as well. I think if you look at the sort of teams that Ben's been under, he's sort of always been the sort of least experienced player in the team. Yeah. And now he's sort of comes in as this most experienced guy in the roster. So it's definitely a turnaround for him, and I think it's something that he's sort of enjoying, and and thriving under. To be honest, I think obviously him being more vocal in game and whatnot, and now also I think that he's able to sort of control what's going on, and that's really allowing him to sort of play to his strengths and play at his best.
No, I can see that. I think it's a lot of the Toronto Ultra actually. You could talk about sometimes you get people kind of hyped. Like Cammy was hyped up. I saw in this last event because of just how well he was playing, and that's fair, right? That's you just sit there and see that ridiculous thing from him. How do you deal with that as a coach when you see a player playing that well? Because I think there may be at least a modicum of, oh, this player may believe in themselves too much. If they're making these big plays and they're having a fantastic tournament, at some point you have to temper that with, don't ego chow, don't put too much pressure on yourself to make the winning play. I know you're dropping 15, 17 in S&Ds, but stick to our system. Is there a way that you had a word that was like, good job, just remember the basics, or is there any way you think of that in that terms?
Yeah, no, I definitely like to keep the players grounded, and just I think the only thing they should be thinking about is focusing on the game plan and just focusing on what needs to be done in the game. Don't think about your own individual performances. Don't think about any of that, because it will all come as the result of playing the game correctly. You'll get high kills. That'll all happen naturally if you do all those things correctly. So I think players that are, I had a bad map there, I'm going to step up next game. Like, just don't even think about it. Like, literally just think about what you need to do in the game to succeed, for your team to succeed, and then the kills will come from that. It's just as simple as that, really. The whole, oh, we've just been outslayed. The outslaying happens most of the time because you don't have control of the hill, because you've not rotated early or something like that. That's when that happens. So I think that's one of the things that we've been sort of drilling in, and especially right after the event, I literally did not want the, obviously, sort of post-event, we've just won. If we start losing a scrim, we're so good anyway. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So we definitely came straight back in on the Tuesday after we played, or the Wednesday when we first started scrimming, but after we won, and we sort of just came in with the mentality again, like, hey, we need to come in the same mentality as last event. We need to win this, and that we're not the finished product. Like, there was a lot of definitely mistakes that we made throughout the tournament. Although we obviously won, we didn't play flawless by any means. I think our respawn was actually probably worse last event than it has been for a few events. So it's one of those things. There's definitely still room for improvement. We won a lot of those clutch S&D game fives and whatnot. We won 3. So there's definitely some room for improvement on S&D and respawn. I think that's just been one of the sort of mentalities we've been drilling in, that we're definitely not the finished product. And if we do get nearer to that point, then we've proven that we can win. So we just have to do the same again. And that's the sort of mentality we've been coming in with.
No, I get that. How have you been dealing with the crunch? How have you been dealing with the pre-champs grind, as I like to call it? Because I know obviously it's been more structured this year in terms of scrims. I know that there are slots booked. I know what time they roughly start. I mean, we are doing this podcast at this time, so you can go and deal with that.
Yeah, I've got scrims in 20 minutes. We're putting Atlanta in 20 minutes. So. Like sort of the way our scrim scheduled is sort of just been ramping up towards champs. So, for example, last week, sort of introducing more S&D sets, and then this week introducing an extra one. So, like, it's just sort of ramping up the S&D practice, as well as, sticking to that sort of standard respawn. Try not to burn the players out too much. So instead of doing sort of triple sets every day, it's like 1 day 2 sets, 1 day 3 sets, 1 day 2 sets, 1 day 3 sets. Sort of alternates.
Does that feel weird to you, Marky? Because you've been on this pre-champs grind, and I remember them being pretty brutal. Like, it's a struggle to make players not play. Because back then, people would be on for like, oh, if we don't play 18 hours a day before champs, we're trash, and we should, and there was this like, shaming. Like, if we don't basically kill ourselves in the 3 weeks before champs, we're never going to win, and I'm going to blame you. Has it been difficult overcoming that? Because you used to be part of that, right? They used to be.
Yeah, definitely. I used to be bad for that, and I think that's one thing that I've learned from the experiences of Ryan and like players like Ben as well, and to the sort of like, I guess, younger players who may not sort of experienced that as much. I think that we all have a good group of players who sort of do understand the importance of sort of getting quality over quantity of practice, and I think that that's one thing that we're sort of more focused on, is making sure that every practice we do play is efficient practice, because we have experienced throughout the season a bunch of inefficient practices where we've really not learned much. So we're at the champs point now where we're just sort of in the mode where we just do not allow us to have inefficient practices, where we're not constantly focused on improving something in the game every single map we play. So I think that that's just sort of been the mentality and sort of quality over quantity. Although, to be fair, we, like I said, we do have a decent amount of practice with a couple of third set S&Ds, but those are only an extra 5 maps. You can squeeze an extra 5 maps in, you know what I mean?
It's champs, right? It's 4.5 million. Don't take it too lightly.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I think it's one of these things. For a start, I think it's much healthier. The whole year has been much healthier. We know we've been taking steps over the last few years, and this is becoming part of the culmination of people finally realizing maybe it's not healthy to get up at 5 p.m. and play till 6 a.m. in the morning. Which I think is great. In terms of champs, is it this is the very first year of the CDL, and it comes with a lot of responsibility, and the first champion of the CDL. Has there been any inklings of extra pressure, or the players being a little bit amped up for it? Because, like I said, champs is a very special time. It is not like any other tournament in the world. Has there been any of that you've noticed, like rumbling under, people being either more focused or talking about it more, or a little bit anxious or excited coming up for this, for what is it, a very big moment in history?
I wouldn't really say we've changed too much. I think we've just sort of continued from where we left off. I think we're pretty focused, like you said. I think that I don't really think I've noticed any like nerves or anything like that, or any anxiousness. I think everyone's just quite calm. I think the last event we were all pretty calm throughout the whole time when we won, and I think that's sort of vibe that we're going with as a team. Just trying to remain a bit more calm and clutching out those important moments. And I think in general we've not really been thinking too much about winning champs and the money and all that thing. Like I keep saying, I think that the thing we've just been stressing is, if we do have efficient practice and we do improve, and if we do get to the point where we are slightly better in respawn, slightly better in S&D for next weekend, we just have got to focus on our game plan and execute, and we can win champs. And that's the mindset. I don't want us to think about winning champs. I want us just think about what we need to do to get to that point, because I think that's the only way you will achieve it.
No, I agree. Now to jump ahead slightly. After your first year with the Toronto Ultra, and I don't want to dive too much into what your future with them and stuff is. I just want to ask you a kind of a generic question about what's next. Obviously, we spoke about this team being a 10-man roster, and we spoke about it being a very unique system. But there is something just on the horizon, something that came up today, and it started talking about free agency and roster mania, and the next year of building a team. Now, you built a team this year with the Ultra. How are you feeling with the oncoming prospect? And I know it's a way away, and I'm sure you haven't really given too much thought of it, but it has probably crossed your desk at the very least. It is coming up on crunch time in terms of building a team for next year, figuring out who to let go, who to re-sign. And if I'm being honest, you've probably already got people in mind, because champs isn't going to change anything unless they start dropping absolute bombs. Are you nervous? Have you got a system? Have you thought anything about the upcoming roster mania?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we've got to obviously look forward and think about things. I think that's part of the job as a coach. You also got to look at the future as well as the present as well. I think that's obviously went through our minds, but I think our main focus has obviously been champs. But yeah, we've definitely got sort of ideas in place for next year, and I think that in general we're all pretty happy with the sort of position we're in right now as a franchise. So
yeah,
I think that we're excited for next year.
Because obviously you've got more players to trade than anybody else. that puts you in another unique position again, because, and I've said this to people, right? Rostermania isn't the same anymore because of this luxury tax, meaning that realistically, you have to be very aware in the negotiations, and you have to kind of keep your head on going, look, we can sign X amount of players, we can sign this guy, I think he's worth this much. If we need to make a change during the year, or we need to bring somebody in because it isn't working, and that's actually less with Toronto Ultra than most, we have to be aware of what money we can keep free, and scouting. I know on the off season itself, I've heard rumblings that amateurs are a big look at this year because of how well they've performed so far in the CDL. Is it going to be one of these war room things like draft day? You'll be sitting in there with your staff, going right. Here's who we want, here's who we can afford, and that going on. Have you got any of that planned down yet?
I mean, in general, I think our sort of, like I said, focus is just on champs. We have, like I said, had sort of, we're definitely planning stuff out and whatnot. But I think our initial focus is on champs, and obviously that sort of, we all like. There's a lot of things that can happen. But from this point to when all the rosters start changing, there's definitely going to be a lot that can change. So definitely sort of primary plans right now.
Monk, has there ever been a point in this year, and I want to keep it to this year, where you thought, oh, I've made a terrible mistake, or something that you've learned from in terms of mistakes? Because I'm sure, obviously, in your own critical self thinking, you've gone, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or that was a misstep.
Um, yeah, I think last year I think I started off on the wrong foot with the sort of team we had. I think that I didn't really sort of instill myself as like the sort of, I guess, most vocal leader that I could be,
Uh-huh.
just because we had a bunch of vocal players. So I sort of took on more of a backseat, which I think it was just a terrible play by me. So I think in general, just yeah, that's sort of been one of the biggest changes from this year is just being way more hands on because I know that I have a high level of core dodge, so I just need to sort of use that as much as possible. To be honest.
That's fair. That's fair. My next question is about Canada. How's it been? Essentially going to Canada. I know, you've been to America many times. I can't remember how many times you've been to Canada, but has it been a big life change for you in terms of adapting to a country you may not have been as familiar with?
Yeah, to be honest, it's not been too bad. My fiance was living with me here from January until literally Monday, just there. So she just moved back to Scotland, which sucks. But in general, like I've been enjoying it. I'd say like Canada kind of has the more in between. I'd say if you were to sort of combine two cultures, it would just be sort of somewhere in between the US and the UK. It kind of feels like it's in between there. And it's a nice place, lovely weather in the summer. Winter was like I felt like I was in the Night's Watch until like March. Um, Walking to the facility in blizzards every day, wearing like 4 layers of clothing. But yeah, I think in general, like right now, especially like the last month and a half, 2 months, have just been great. I've just been getting like 10K steps in a day, just outside of Scrims, just walking about Toronto, just sort of soaking in the sun and just the good vibes around here, man. It's a awesome place. It's like a really sort of energetic, vibey place that sort of just makes you motivated to grind in anything.
No, I get that. I get that entirely. I've been to Canada a few times, including skiing once, and it was unbelievably good. But sometimes it's like, oh, it's sunny but still snowy at the same time. So the weather always kind of blew my mind in that regards of how it could be cold with just massive amounts of sunshine. There is something else you mentioned actually, and this I have to kind of discount the COVID part right now. We will talk about that in just a second. The what did you call it? The facilities of Toronto
Yeah.
Ultra. How is that going for you? How is it working in that environment? And well, you were working in that environment when you had the team
Yeah.
with you and stuff. But we'll pretend that it's back then. What's it like working in that kind of more structured? Everybody comes here. We're not all just sitting in bedrooms and scrimming and then meeting up at an event.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more. I think practice in general was way more productive. Players, have you be sitting. Sometimes it still happens now, admittedly. Like you'll be sitting there, and then you'll be talking to a player, and then you'll just hear their headset ruffle, and then you go, "Sorry, I was at the toilet. What were you saying?" You just didn't know, but you've just sat there for a minute explaining something to someone. I think those sort of things are just obviously avoided. Um, in general, it's just, yeah, like I said, way more efficient, productive in the facility. But like you said, we've not been in there for a while since obviously COVID's happened, and I mean, our plan is to return there as soon as possible. We've actually got a new facility, which is literally just across the road, pretty much, but much bigger, way more space, and everyone's together instead of just the way it was before. Was we had sort of an office, sort of all the business side of things, and then across the street was like a facility for all for like the Overwatch and our team.
Uh-huh.
And now we're all going to be combined in the same building, which I think is going to be good for sort of um, bringing everyone together within the company. I think that's one of the things that that COVID's really been a struggle with is is we've not really been able to make those relationships for, especially for like players. Maybe I've had a bit more contact with staff because obviously I have those sort of meetings and whatnot. But players, especially, like they've not really been able to make too many connections with the staff, which they might have been able to if they were, in the same facility in the same building. And I think that's important for personally. I think that would have a huge benefit on the team. Like being friends with the people that are, bringing doing other aspects of the team, like in terms of like building up your brand and stuff like that. And I think is if everyone's sort of more of a collective unit there, you're just going to see more positive results.
No, I fully agree. I couldn't agree more that having that infrastructure is incredibly beneficial. How has COVID affected you and the team and everything going on this year? Because it has been obviously an unprecedented event. It has basically turned esport and the world on its head. Let's be perfectly clear. It's not something we can brush under the rug. How have you adapted? What was the biggest challenges with it? Because it's such a significant change in terms of not being able to go to lands, not being able to look in people's eyes, and when you have to talk to them about hard topics and tell them and stuff. So, from your point of view, what's the big things that have come out of it?
Well, for us, I think the mentality that we came in with going into it when we first knew it was going online, that was that we know other people will sort of take the foot off the gas when it comes to it all being online. So we
Yeah,
just need to put the foot on the gas. That was sort of mentality that we had. I think so that we were just being sort of just since around that point, to be honest, that's really around the time we started rapidly improving. It started being online. Shout out Bill Fiber. But yeah, and no, no, I'm only joking. We've just actually generally improved as a team. Like if our results from scrims to matches are literally pretty similar. They're like from the start of the season when we weren't doing so good online in scrims, we weren't doing good in the matches. It was a common theme. So I definitely think that in general it's been sort of, I guess it was sort of motivating for us in a way because we knew other teams would take the foot off the gas. So it could be an
yeah,
opportunity for us to sort of sneak in there, which we obviously have. Um, and in general, I mean, the first couple months were difficult for me. Like I was having like online Zoom calls with my friends,
yeah,
but they were all locked down as well back home in Scotland. So I feel like that was it was weird that I was sort of in another country, but I wasn't really missing much because everyone else was just locked down anyway.
yeah,
But I was getting to this stage where I was sort of just not really looking after myself health wise. I think I was at like 220 pounds. So I think for me, I've really always struggled motivating myself going to the gym and whatnot.
yeah.
So the sort of mentality I had as well is I've literally used a million excuses over the years about traveling and whatnot. I'm locked down for the next 6 months, so I'm just gonna like not use it as an excuse anymore. So even with gyms closed, I was doing at home workouts and stuff like that, and I'm down like 22 pounds right now. So
Oh, that's awesome, man! Congrats. I
yeah.
think I'm up fucking about 40.
Yeah, no, I was up. I was up at like 3 months into the lockdown, and then like I said, I just like sort of was like, I'm literally sitting there like every day, like, oh, I'll wait till gyms reopen and I'll start going to the gym. But like, I've been using different excuses for years, so I just said to myself, I need to stop making excuses.
No, I completely understand that, Marky. I couldn't empathize more with you in that scenario. I mean, mine's slightly different than that. I've torn the left hand side of my body to ribbons, and it's been like that for about 9 months. Just doing one small mistake is essentially mean I can't walk very far. But let's move on very quickly. There are a couple of questions. First one, I think this one's quite interesting. Mark, has Zin stopped talking about the 1v2 yet?
He's definitely been banging on about that a lot. Whenever we've actually been playing a lot of SD scrims, and I've noticed an increased amount of clutches from Zin. I think he's really reeling from the confidence of it. But whenever he clutches, or whenever he's in a 1v1 or anything, you just know what he's going to say. He's like, "Oh, I've been here before, guys," or something like that. And he won the round to be like, "You know me, Iceman," and it's a good laugh. Like I think in general, he's been sort of memeing himself a little because obviously he was sort of getting shit on in a lot of clutches historically, but now he's feeling it, and he's looking more confident in S&D practice as well as obviously what he's shown in the matches. He was performing much better in Search and Destroy than he was in previous events. So I think it's good. It's good for him.
It's good to see. I think I tweeted out saying, that was a. I think he did a bounce. I can't remember if he bounced, but whatever he did, the movement mechanic he used, I thought it was a
Yeah,
bunny
bunny
hop.
hop.
Was a bunny hop. I said it was so smooth, the bunny hop he hit. And I was like, that is an incredible bunny hop. And because we only caught the tail end of it, I feel like enough people didn't see to hit the mechanic in that high pressure situation. Basically, just snapped him straight on. And that's it's something that obviously pro players make look so easy. But to hit it that smoothly and to hit the 1v2 and not panic in that scenario, because some players may have run. Like he was defending. He could have tried to get out of there. He could have gone big arch. He could have tried and hide in the box for time. He could have done anything in that scenario. But instead, he hit the bunny hop mechanic and took it down. Another question coming in, Mark. How does it feel to win a chip with that dip?
That's a shocking question, but
no,
yeah, it is Ryan. Yeah, it's because when we got to the semi-finals of the last event, I did a stinking tweet and I tweeted out time to win that chip with that dip or something like that, like the day before Championship Sunday, and then we got 3-0'd off the stage. I've just been getting roasted for that ever since, because it was an absolutely shocking tweet from me. And I really did make the team lose with that one. I think I'll take full responsibility for that loss.
No, that's fair. I think that's entirely fair. Here's another question from me, Marky, in terms of with how we've spoke about Toronto Ultra taking a unique aspect in the way that they've managed players during this year. Do you think any other franchises will look to emulate that system in some way? Do you think it's the future? Do you think it's something that has its benefits that other people may latch onto?
I definitely think the future is, a sort of more like traditional sports system where you have, the starting team, the designated substitute players, and then the sort of the challengers players playing in those challengers tournaments and whatnot, and just sort of developing the players with, sort of a head coach system where you've got the head coaches in charge of everything, then you've got sort of sub coaches coaching the challenger side of things and whatnot, where everyone's playing the same system, you're sort of developing players the same way. I think that's the future, to be honest. Something that I would definitely love to sort of, be a part of building. So that's something that, hopefully we can get something like that going in the future.
Love the sound of it. This is a question. Obviously, I don't expect you to give me any specifics, and you may say no to it. Anything Toronto Ultra have got, in the back pocket, ready for the biggest tournaments of the year? Any kind of sneaky strategies, unique breaks? Anything off the rip that they may try and use, because obviously a lot of people, it's been happening in years past that people have kept specific strategies, angles, or something in the back pocket ready to go for the biggest event of the year. Toronto Ultra got anything along those lines?
I would say we've not really got any sort of back pocket, no one knows strategies, but all I will say is that, coming into this event, I think that we sort of came with the task, me and Ryan, of making sure that we completely have the ability to, flick between different looks on Search and Destroy, and making sure that we're able to basically be uncounterable in S&D and be able to come in, for example, if we're playing a specific map and play the completely opposite way that we last played it. So we're able to do that, and I think that's one thing that we've been really focused on, just making sure that we're completely uncounterable in S&D, and I think that's sort of where we're getting to right now, and that's what I'm sort of really happy about.
Awesome. It's good to hear that, Marky. I think, for me, it's one of those things where I always kind of, expect to see something wild at champs, somebody with an angle nobody's seen before. But I think people have grinded this game so much, we probably won't see an awful lot of champs, I am hoping the GA sticks, because I know it's been a big spot in contention this year for some teams and what they can and can't use. But Marky, I think, you're about to go for Scrims, so have you got any final words for the people watching?
Yeah, I mean, so if there's any Toronto Ultra fans out there, I appreciate the support, and hopefully we can, go ahead and get this win for you. All I'm going to say is, on the other hand, that sounded very nice. I'm going to say, just expect to see absolute gunnies from the Toronto Ultra again at champs, because that's what you're going to get hit with. That was the shittest trash talk ever. Cut. Remove from the podcast.
All right, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I do appreciate it. I know you've got Scrims to get to. Obviously, for people watching, thank you for tuning in every week. I'm going to try to get the production better and better each week. I know it's a little bit better. I tried some things. I fixed the mic. I've done loads of stuff. Thank you so much. It will be coming on to podcast sites very, very shortly because they take forever for some reason. I don't really know why. But thank you once again to MarkyB. I appreciate it. We will definitely have you on again in the off-season. This has been the Bricecast. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.